Thank you, Chair Kudo and Regents. Welcome to how most of us now spend most of every day. This COVID-19 crisis is, of course, all-consuming, and I just stepped out of a cabinet meeting with the governor and his team this morning. The state situation is about as good as we could expect and hope for. We are not seeing increasing numbers of cases in the state right now, and our testing percentage is per capita is actually one of the better among the states in the nation. But we are by no means out of the woods, and nobody should be relaxing at this news. I heard a term on NPR one morning, non-terrifying, and I think that's how we can characterize the news right now about COVID-19 in our state. There is no specific plan at this time for loosening the social distancing measures that have served our state so well. I am happy to report also that your university is doing well. We are succeeding in our primary objectives, and as I've shared with you, we are completing our semester. Students will graduate this spring. Proposals for extramural funding are being processed, and our students and employees have remained safe. Tragically, one of the early deaths in Hawaii did touch our community, but not our campus. Our campuses physically resemble ghost towns, but our mission continues. And those few students who are in our student residences continue to live and be held safely. And as most of us are working from home, as you are doing today, we are also becoming experts at Zoom and learning about our colleagues' children and pets as they wander by the cameras. We continue to work through a myriad of issues relating to academic procedures, physical practices, and human resources. We do so in consultation variously with HIEMA, the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, with whom we are in touch daily, with our own Office of General Counsel, with the State Department of Human Resources and Development, and within our system-wide leadership team, which also convenes every morning. We work with our faculty senates, with student leaders, and our public employee unions. Unlike a month ago, I would say we have many days now in which we have no new surprises, and that's a good thing for us. One of our biggest challenges is the financial concerns that face our students. Many of our students, like people throughout our communities, are struggling financially. And while we have tried to keep all of our student employees on payroll through the semester, they depend on their salaries from us. Many of them have been laid off and furloughed from off-campus jobs, and many of them have family members who have been laid off and furloughed. Under the leadership of Tim Dolan, the UH Foundation moved very quickly to establish two new funds, one for urgent student relief for students impacted by COVID-19, and one to support COVID-19 related research within the university. And you probably saw the public announcement yesterday. I am delighted that our Urgent Student Relief Fund has now reached over $1 million. And as I will share shortly, we hope to have substantial additional relief from the federal government to disperse directly to students by next week. Students, particularly those in need, have asked for relief from tuition and fees. This has been something that campuses across the country have faced, and we also received a legislative inquiry on our fees, to which we provided a comprehensive reply. Let me say that we are committed to deliver a high-quality UH education, and we have no intention of refunding tuition and academic fees that are dedicated to the cost of delivering education. That work continues. There was no savings to UH associated with moving online this semester. To the contrary, and under Board of Regents policies, we have always charged the same tuition to students online or in person, regardless of the mode of instruction. We did assemble teams to look comprehensively at both our academic and student-related fees across our 10 campuses. This might be the first time we've done that, and based on that analysis, we identified groups of fees and charges that will and will not be refunded on a prorated basis. The largest charges that we assess outside of tuition are the charges for room and board at UH Manoa and UH Hilo. Those will be refunded, and many of them already have been refunded on a prorated basis for the time students vacated their rooms, and arrangements are being made for students who did not return after spring break to either pick up their belongings or have them shipped to their homes, perhaps on the mainland. The next largest fees are for our student recreation centers at UH Manoa and UH Hilo. Both were closed mid-semester, but on this one we reached different conclusions on refunding due to the nature of the funding used to construct. So the UH Hilo Rec Center was constructed with general obligation bonds. So the student fees for that center are being refunded on a prorated basis. However, construction of the UH Manoa Rec Center did involve UH revenue bonds serviced with what was then a new student fee that was supported by the student body, and those fees are the source of funding for the debt service. So we will not be refunding that particular rec center fee at UH Manoa. Most co-curricular student activities funded by fees, such as student governments, broadcast and media, those activities continue, albeit virtually and safely. And those activities are conducted by students for students. So those fees will not be refunded. Fees that support consumables that are not being consumed for the second half of the semester as we're online, such as chemicals or art supplies, those will be refunded on a prorated basis. So let me turn now to the matter of federal funding, which I mentioned, provided through the $2.2 trillion CARES Act. And I have a slide, perhaps, that we can put up. I actually have 3 slides. Can you go back one? Back. Perfect. Okay. So this, I want to credit EAB, a national company that we work with, for providing what I think is the clearest visual explanation of higher education funding in the CARES Act. I won't read all the pieces of it. There are basically 2 major funds. There's a Governor's Education Relief Fund, affectionately called the GEERF, and a Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, or HEERF. So the GEERF is for Hawaii. That number was just released Tuesday. Until then, we didn't know exactly how much would come to Hawaii. That's $9.9 million, 9.99 actually, closer to 10. That is for early childhood education, K-12 education, higher education, both public and private. And it is a fairly flexible source of funds. And I'm now beginning a conversation with the governor's office and his stimulus team on how that will be released across all the sectors to which it can apply. The second large fund is the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, or HEERF. That's in 3 buckets. The first bucket is the largest, and that is awarded directly to institutions, essentially every institution across the country. Those amounts were announced last Thursday by the Secretary of Education. There's about almost $33 million for the state of Hawaii, and the UH portion of that for our 10 campuses is about $24 million. And I provided you a breakdown by campus. The Department of Education made those determinations. Of that $24 million on each campus, a minimum of half must be disbursed directly to students in the form of student aid. So this has been a little bit of this was a rush for us over the last, I guess it's now a little bit less than a week since the time of the announcement last Thursday. For those funds, only the first half were released. That is, so about 12 million of that 24 million directly to our campuses. Every campus had to submit a proposal through a pretty messy process that was not ever used before by the people who had to do the applications. We do have 10 proposals submitted as of Tuesday. As of about an hour ago, we had not yet received any of that money, but we expect it, if not this week, by early next week. Immediately after the announcement last Thursday, I convened a group under the leadership of our System Associate VP for Student Affairs, Hei Okimoto, to develop UH's approach to awarding those grants. Although they are allocated to the campuses, our UH leadership decided that we should have a common approach. We agreed on two priorities. First, emergency aid grants directly to current students so they can successfully complete the current semester. And this is especially critical to those who are on track to graduate this spring. Secondly, we want to provide aid to continuing students to ensure that they can enroll for fall 2020. Fortunately, we can leverage the processes we set up only weeks ago to process the requests we were getting for the Urgent Student Relief Fund that we set up through the University of Hawaii Foundation. So that turned out to be a real win for us. And these new grants will be dispersed directly to our students by our 10 campus financial aid offices. I can't say enough about Lenny Govea at our Office of Research Services, Vice President Sirmos and their teams, which helped our campuses get those applications in. As you can imagine, the government system was especially slow, while several thousand universities were trying for the first time to apply for funding. So next up for us will be the other half of these funds, which can be used by our campuses to address the costs associated with COVID. So let me stress, these funds will not relieve the budget pressures. I'll come back to that shortly. But they will be very helpful to helping our students in dealing with the actual costs of COVID on our campuses. The second pot that you see up there is for institutions who have significant unmet needs. My reading of the statute is that we are unlikely to qualify for those. They are likely going to go to institutions very small that didn't get anything out of the very large $12.5 billion fund. But no rules have been issued on that one yet. The last little pocket, just under $1 billion. It's amazing that we think that is a little pocket, but that's a national pocket of funding for minority serving institutions. All 10 of our campuses are classified as Native Hawaiian serving institutions. Nationally, the estimate is that there will be a pot of about $25 million for Alaska Native serving institutions and Native Hawaiian serving institutions. That number has not been formalized, nor has any methodology for how that will be awarded among those institutions been announced yet at this time. And I provided a couple more slides just briefly to you on how those funds can be used, but in the interest of time, you can take a look at those as well. We have no guidance yet on the other funds that may become available to us. Let me say more now about the overall finances of the institution. As you know, I issued a hiring freeze toward the end of March. It was clear we were heading into a financial crisis on top of a pandemic crisis. A freeze is not a strategy for budget reduction, but it's a tactic that puts the brake on new expenditures that might be viewed in retrospect as unnecessary or unwise. We cannot survive on freezes, or frankly, we cannot again survive with across-the-board cuts that we have been most commonly utilizing in the past. So we're now pivoting into more serious financial planning. Our first steps include trying to understand significant variables. These are all major uncertainties for us still. We do not yet know what the state general fund budget will look like. We just received a new $2.2 million restriction from the governor on Tuesday. That's of funds already appropriated this fiscal year. You have seen in the paper the drama regarding possible pay reductions for all public employees, including the University of Hawaii. This is based on a projection of a $1.5 billion fiscal shortfall over the next 15 months. General funds will obviously be impacted. They account for a significant portion of our operating dollars. We do not yet know what our enrollment numbers will be, and what our student makeup will look like. And those are the two things that drive hundreds of millions of dollars of tuition revenue, our second most important source of operational funding. We have some conventional wisdom that suggests we will do well on our resident students, which is great for serving our mission. We will probably not do as well on non-resident students, and especially international students, which is bad for our bottom line because those are the groups that pay higher tuition. We do not yet know for sure whether there will be public employee labor savings, whether mandated or negotiated as there were during the Great Recession just over 10 years ago. We now mostly understand the funding available to us through CARES, which is not budget relieving as it was during the Stimulus Act when we got $22 million of direct support for budget shortfalls from the state. There is a strong expectation of a fourth Stimulus Act, but we do not yet know anything about what level of support there will be for higher education, if any, and whether or not it would be budget relieving. We have announced that our first summer session will be fully online. We will make the call on the second summer session regarding online or in person in May. And while we are very hopeful, we don't know for sure that we will be fully reopened even by fall. That would likely be a very strong influence on enrollment if we have to remain fully online, particularly impacting the non-resident students who do pay higher tuition rates. Even if we return to in-person classes, we will likely have more online components within the context of hybrid classes, and we will likely deploy social distancing within our classrooms. So we're about to embark on some scenario planning, including with outside experts, to help us understand the impact of these variables so that as we gain more information, we can fine-tune our specific plans. We also have to look carefully at the impact on our self-supporting auxiliaries and programs like the bookstore, parking, student housing, all of which are impacted by all of these unknowns. Integral to this financial planning will be prioritization. On behalf of the UH leadership, I can assure you we are not taking the perspective that our job is to protect and preserve what we do today or make some temporary steps and then just try and get back to exactly the way things were. In my role as leader of UH Manoa, I'm personally engaged with our campus leadership team in budget planning for the campus. It will certainly involve changes and articulation of priorities that will be extremely uncomfortable for many. And I know the same is true on all of our campuses as we literally reconsider every assumption and long-standing practice. We also have to ensure that we learn from this long, forced, and uncomfortable shift to online modes of teaching, learning, and working. We are somehow surviving without travel. I have not personally signed a piece of paper in probably 3 weeks. So we can't simply breathe a sigh of relief when this crisis passes and return to what was. We need to build on what our entire community is learning about online teaching to offer more fully online programs, intentionally planned programs, unlike this semester, in areas and formats our students and communities need, along with more hybrid programs that make better use of our resources while also focusing on upping the quality of our learning experience. And administratively, we need to push even harder toward paperlessness, and we need to embrace telework as a natural part of what we do, albeit not necessarily full-time for so many employees. I'm also personally pivoting to working on the critical role UH must and will play in helping all of Hawaii move forward toward our post-pandemic economy. It must be focused on high-quality jobs, taking care of our people and our environment, and creating a positive and equitable future for all. You have heard me say before that UH is the institution most critical to the future of our state, and that is true now more than ever. Hawaii cannot transform our economy. Indeed, we cannot succeed without a strong university system that is focused on our future and is supported by our state and community. I am committed to deep and meaningful engagement, personally and by UH, in the forthcoming conversations among government, the private sector, and nonprofits about how to craft a new economy for Hawaii that works better for more of our people across the islands. Finally, I cannot acknowledge and thank the people of this university enough. We have an amazing community of students, faculty, and staff who are literally giving everything to help each and every one of their colleagues succeed, even as they are coping with their own personal and family challenges. You should all be incredibly, incredibly proud of this institution you govern.